The village was gripped by fear, with residents unwilling to go outside after dusk unless necessary, often venturing out only in small groups with lanterns. Amidst this tense atmosphere, a stranger named Maulana Kalusha Fakir arrived at Ismail Bayopari's office. He was an elderly man with a white beard, dressed in a white kurta, and described himself as a wanderer who loved traveling from place to place. His arrival sparked curiosity as everyone gathered around him in the office as darkness fell outside. The story begins with a man who wants to spend his last days traveling and reciting prayers. While passing through a village, he notices a strange boy and follows him, uncovering the mystery surrounding a shepherd boy's madness and a suspicious death. He shares these events with the villagers and seeks a solution from Maulana Kalusha Fakir. The narrator introduces the tale, mentioning an old village saying, warning against going out at night if crying is heard, which initially was confusing but gains meaning as the story unfolds. Tanvir Tushar, the storyteller, emphasizes the uniqueness of this tale involving Maulana Kalusha Fakir. He describes it as more than just a spooky story, highlighting its bizarre and intriguing nature. The event is set sometime before the partition when Bangladesh did not yet exist. Setting the historical context for the narrative. The story is set in a rural area of northern Bangladesh before the country's independence, focusing on a large landowning family headed by Ismail Bayopari. Their home is surrounded by vast fields and dense forests, with a small river and footpath nearby lined with cotton and babla trees. The nearest village and market, Ganjarhat, are several kilometers away, accessible through bamboo groves and forests. Ismail Bayopari conducted business at this market. Ismail Bayopari regularly traveled to Ganjarhat, taking workers with him by boat in the monsoon and on foot in dry seasons. As winter approached, he set off one day with 3 workers to the market, planning to return the next afternoon. Meanwhile, his wife was washing clothes at the riverbank near their home with 3 working women, who were hanging and kneeling as they worked. The scene begins with women washing clothes in a river during a cold winter afternoon. Ismail Bapari's wife watches over them while chatting. As the sun sets and the wind picks up, a faint, trembling cry of a girl is heard, but only one woman initially notices it. Ismail Bapari's wife leaves the group, and later, as evening approaches, the women hear the cries again, this time louder and more terrifying, prompting them to scream and panic. The 3 women rush to Ismail Bapari's wife, distressed and almost collapsing. They recount hearing a mysterious crying sound while washing clothes, initially faint and heard by only one woman, then by all. They try to locate the source and see an old woman walking alone along the river path, crying and appearing weighed down by age. The woman wears a dirty white sari and does not respond when called. The women observe the old woman continuing to cry as she walks, ignoring their questions. When finally looked at, the old woman reveals a horrifying face, described as covered with burst boils, oozing a thin liquid around the eyes, shocking the women who had never seen such a sight before. The group witnesses an old woman who suddenly stops crying and ominously warns them they will die. A terrifying foul smell overwhelms them, causing panic and a frantic escape. Ismail Bapari, his wife, and others head to the riverbank, but the old woman disappears mysteriously, leaving only her clothes behind. The layout of the house is described, including rooms for workers and a cowshed. Shortly after Ismail Bapari's wife rests, she hears a baby crying from a nearby room. She goes outside with a lantern and finds some workers gathered. When she calls out, one of the women opens the door and steps out. A man who steps outside vomits violently and reports that everyone inside the house is similarly ill, vomiting uncontrollably. The oldest servant, who accompanied the search for the old woman, warns Ismail Bapari's wife that they must leave immediately to survive, having figured out the grim reality of their situation. The elder urgently insists that they cannot stay any longer and must flee at once to avoid death. Ismail-Bapara's wife is shocked and reluctant to leave the sick behind, but the elder explains that there is no hope for the three afflicted and that their survival depends on escaping quickly before everything collapses. On the night of the incident, some villagers, including Ismail-Bapara's relatives, gathered to discuss the troubling events. News spread quickly the next morning, causing fear and avoidance of the neighboring village. Ismail-Bapari learns from passersby and his wife that the situation is dire. He and a group of villagers set out to search for 3 missing women at his ancestral house, where they find one dead woman near the gate. Upon approaching the house, the villagers find no response after calling out the names of the 3 women, confirming their deaths. They return to the village, where the story shifts to describing Ismail-Bapara's old house by a pond, highlighting the kitchen and an outdoor meeting area called a chali, where villagers gather for discussions and decisions. That evening, villagers assembled anxiously in the meeting room under a lamp as an elder warns about a terrifying presence called Alibi, which has now come back to the village. Strict instructions are given to finish work early, keep children close, and avoid strangers at night. Concerns arise about the 3 dead bodies in Ismail-Bapara's house, leading to murmurs among the group. Ismail-Bapari expresses his reluctance to return to his house and suggests burning it down with the bodies inside. The villagers agree to the plan, and the next day a small group gathers to carry it out. His servant retrieves essential belongings from the house filled with the stench of decay. The men then push the corpse near the gate toward the fence, pour kerosene, and set the house ablaze, watching as flames consume the property. Following a devastating fire that destroyed a house and killed 3 women, nearby villages began experiencing catastrophic floods attributed to Ola Bibbi, a feared figure believed to haunt village roads. While some villages were wiped out and many disappeared, Ismail-Bapari's village initially avoided contact with others and remained untouched. However, eventually, the village too suffered losses as many residents mysteriously vanished, spreading a fearful shadow of mourning across the region. After about a year, normalcy seemed to return, but Ismail-Bapari's new house became known as the Burnt House, marking the beginning of new troubles for the village. One afternoon, a herdsman took cattle to graze near the burnt house where fresh grass had grown. A cow broke away and entered the burnt house's boundary, grazing inside despite the herdsman's attempts to drive it out. The herdsman, hesitant to approach the house due to its ominous reputation, finally ran to get the owner. The owner and some villagers came to retrieve the cattle, but as dusk approached, the cow suddenly panicked and fled wildly into the surrounding area, disappearing quickly and leaving the men confused and alarmed. That evening, the villagers gathered and were warned not to approach the burnt house at night. The next morning, several villagers searched the area and found the cow dead near the gate where it first began grazing, with its neck unnaturally twisted and eyes wide open. Frightened, they buried the cow in a prepared pit and returned home. Following the incident, the herdsman developed a high fever and began experiencing terrifying nightmares and hallucinations, screaming about being pursued and captured by a fiery woman. His mental state deteriorated rapidly as he ran around the village, screaming in fear, causing widespread alarm among the villagers. After these events, the villagers became increasingly fearful and avoided the burnt house even during the day. Discussions about the strange occurrences continued, and soon more eerie incidents began happening. If a newborn was present in a household, a shadowy female figure would appear at night near the infant. Many mothers reported seeing this vague apparition trying to strangle their babies, adding to the growing terror and superstition within the village. A child in the village suddenly begins crying intensely until turning red and struggling to breathe. The mosque leader is called to pray and calm the child. This incident causes fear among villagers with newborns, who start staying together at night with men guarding. Meanwhile, some children play near a burnt house by the river. Suddenly, One child standing waist-deep in water screams and drowns before others can react. The frightened children run to the village and inform everyone, who then search the river but find no trace of the child by nightfall. The next day, villagers resume the search and find the drowned child lying on the riverbank near the burnt house. Upon inspection, they realize the child is dead but with no water in the stomach, which is unusual for drowning victims. More disturbing is the deep hand-shaped mark on the child's right leg, as if someone forcefully pulled the leg. Additionally, there are 4 finger-like marks on the child's neck with burn-like scars, suggesting a heated object was pressed against the skin. Villagers believe the child was dragged underwater, strangled, and killed before swallowing water, explaining the lack of water in the stomach. However, who pulled and strangled the child remains a mystery, increasing fear among the people. Soon after, reports emerge of a shadowy female figure wandering the village at night accompanied by faint crying sounds. This frightens the villagers so much that no one goes out after dusk without a lantern and company. Meanwhile, 2 more children go missing and are later found dead near the burnt house, all bearing the same burned finger marks on their necks. The village is gripped by terror, with no answers about who or what is responsible. In a moment of panic, an unfamiliar man named Maulana Kalusha Fakir arrives at Ismail Biopari's office in the village. He is a wandering holy man who travels from place to place, spending his days reciting prayers. Upon entering the village, he follows a mad boy and listens to Ismail Biopari explain the strange circumstances surrounding the mad boy, the shepherd, and the mysterious deaths of children in the village. After hearing the story, Maulana Kalusha Fakir remains silent for a moment before warning the villagers that something evil has entered the village. Maulana Kalusha Fakir reveals that he sensed the evil's presence as soon as he entered the village and, by God's grace, has the spiritual skills to resolve the problems. He begins living in Ismail Biopari's office and inspects the affected house with several villagers. He performs a ritual near the house by smelling some soil he collected and then discards it. Later that evening, he informs the villagers that a major problem exists and that he will need certain items to address it. Ismail Biopari promises to procure whatever is needed. Maulana Kalusha Fakir requests specific items: raw clay made into an unbaked pot, and black cumin seeds purchased from a shopkeeper who opens his shop first thing in the morning. The next day, all the items are gathered. That evening, the office is crowded, as the Maulana asks for someone who was present at the house on the day of the incident to assist with the ritual. An elderly servant named Chakar volunteers, despite his old age and impending death, hoping to bring peace to himself by helping the village. Maulana Kalusha Fakir instructs him to follow precise steps, spreading a mixture of flour and black cumin in the clay pot around the house carefully and without fear. The narrative describes instructions given to an individual named Probin, emphasizing the need to complete his task without fear or distraction despite obstacles. He must bring 3 handfuls of soil from the boundary of a specific house and place it into a container. During a full moon night, a spiritual figure, Maulana Kalusha Fakir, performs a ritual mixing substances and breathing onto the soil and Probjan's body to protect him. Probjan is reassured of his safety and warned not to look back when returning. After receiving these instructions and protections, Probjan leaves the office, while others anxiously await his return and the outcome of the mission. A distressed man returns after nearly an hour, visibly terrified and sweating profusely. He recounts how, while leaving the office with a sickle in hand under moonlight, he felt an invisible force pulling him back, making it difficult to approach a particular house. Despite the fear, he eventually approaches the house and notices children running around it, their sounds clearly audible. The man is surprised by the children's sudden disappearance when he nears the house. He begins to feel an unbearable heat, similar to standing near a fire. Attempting to protect himself, he spreads a mixture of flour and black cumin around the house. As he does this, he hears the sound of women crying together from inside the house. Fearful upon hearing the women's cries, the man hastens to finish scattering the mixture. During this, he sees a dark female figure resembling a human shape drifting in the air above the house. Feeling chilled, he continues to scatter the mixture as the crying grows louder. Once done, he picks up some soil from the mixture and is suddenly confronted by a fleeting vision of the youngest female servant who used to work at their home. The apparition of the youngest female servant appears briefly before vanishing. Overcome with fear, the man runs towards the village with the sickle in hand, while sorrowful cries follow him. He then hands over the sickle to Maulana Kalusha Fakir, who begins to explain the tragic backstory involving the 3 female servants who once worked at the house. Maulana Kalusha Fakir reveals that one of the 3 female servants died heartbroken after being abandoned by her husband while pregnant. Her restless spirit allegedly seeks revenge by tormenting the village children at night. He suggests this might be caused by a malevolent spirit or jinn, cautioning that some mysteries cannot be rationally explained and are best left as they are. The Maulana states that he will follow his ritual by submerging the sickle in the river to prevent further incidents. Following this, the village experiences no more supernatural events, and the previously disturbed shepherd boy gradually returns to normal life. Meanwhile, Ismail Bapari builds a room beside his office for Maulana Kalusha Fakir, who becomes a regular evening presence at the office, drawing people around the glowing lantern for conversations. Tanvir. Tusher shares his strange and eerie personal experiences, often centered around rural Bengal's fearful tales. He hopes to return with more stories in the future. The narration vividly brings images to life, engaging the audience deeply. Viewers are encouraged to comment on how they felt about the story and to share it with loved ones. The segment concludes with a call to subscribe to the channel and introduces Russell, who warmly greets the audience and prepares to share a new story as written. The speaker introduces himself as Yasin from Baikail village, Katail Tangail, studying at a Dekil madrasa and preparing for the SSC exam. He plans to share a personal story involving himself and his friends that happened about a year ago on the 14th of February. Although he intended to share it the next day, due to busyness, he delayed it until now. Yasin introduces his friends, Michelle Siam, Bazid, Sohan, Shahab, Shuvo, and Jihad, all madrasa students. The story takes place on the night of Shab-e-Barat, the 14th of February. Before narrating the main event, he mentions an incident involving Michelle and Shahab a few days earlier related to an Islamic gathering that they could not attend due to family reasons. Michelle and Shahab attended an Islamic gathering in Dubai which ended late. With no available transportation, they had to walk back home late at night. On their way, they passed by a mill that had caught fire in a previous accident causing many deaths. Since then, strange and scary occurrences have been reported at that site. Michelle and Shihab realized that passing by the mill late at night was dangerous but had no alternative route. As they walked cautiously, Michelle suddenly felt a heavy sensation on his shoulder and became unable to speak. Shihab noticed Michelle's unusual behavior and asked what was wrong. Michelle described his neck feeling heavy, signaling impending danger. They silently remembered Allah for protection as they approached the mill. Michelle's heaviness slightly eased near the mill. They then heard a dog's bark from afar, heightening their fear. Suddenly, a truck sped by, with its headlights illuminating a dark figure crossing the road in front of them. The segment recounts an incident where an accident-prone area was involved, but the individuals were protected by divine intervention. Shihab and Michelle decide to spend the night at Michelle's house due to distance concerns. Upon entering the room, Michelle's mother makes cryptic remarks that confuse both Shihab and Michelle. It is revealed that Michelle's mother and grandmother have multiple jinns, which might explain her perceptiveness. Michelle's mother questions them before offering food, during which Michelle experiences a sudden chest pressure that subsides shortly after. The narrative then shifts to the night of Shab-e-Barat on February 14th, explaining that while devils are restrained during Ramadan, jinns exist in both good and bad forms. The story resumes with the narrator explaining their part-time job at a shop. While closing the shop, the narrator receives a message from Michelle, inviting them to a picnic on Shab-e-Barat night with friends. The narrator agrees and heads toward the bridge where the group is waiting. They plan to go to a secluded place near Bayezid's grandmother's house for the picnic, and the narrator joins them in walking there. The group arrives at a remote, forest-like hilly area called Shimultoli in Bhatpara around 8:30 p.m. They visit Bayezid's grandfather's house, which is located near the Shahid Saladin cantonment boundary in a secluded garden surrounded by trees like banana and acacia. They are given a separate room for cooking and resting. While friends, Sohan and Siam, prepare ingredients such as chicken, onions, chili, and garlic, the narrator, along with Michelle and Bayezid, goes out to find a place to cut wood for cooking. Upon reaching a four-road junction, the narrator warns the others that it's unsafe to cut wood there due to the remote location and potential danger. They move slightly further to a spot under a jackfruit tree near the house to chop wood. Meanwhile, they gather firewood and prepare to light a fire. Around 11 p.m., the group, including the narrator, Michelle, Siam, and Shubo, work together to get ready for cooking. Being fans of the show, BHUT.com, the group decides to create a spooky atmosphere by playing an episode. Some members get scared and ask to stop, but the narrator insists on enjoying the eerie entertainment. After the episode ends, they prepare banana leaves for eating. Shubo and Michelle sprinkle biryani around, believing it will keep evil spirits away. Later, Michelle notices someone peeking from across the trees, who then moves behind Shihab. Despite everyone sitting in their places, the group senses something unusual. At midnight, Shihab looks back but sees no one. Michelle signals Shihab to stay quiet as they continue their meal and prepare to leave. At around midnight, the group prepares to leave Bayezid's grandmother's house. Michelle urges everyone to hurry, warning that the place is unsafe. Despite the fear, the narrator finds the situation somewhat thrilling. They walk for about 10 minutes, with 10 to 15 minutes of the journey remaining, as they leave the mountainous path. On a winding road, the group notices a dog that starts following them. They walk quickly, reciting prayers, with the dog accompanying them until they cross a bridge where it disappears into a garden. The group then disperses to their homes, with Shihab staying behind due to his distance. None of them share the strange incident at the time. The narrator shares that Michelle did not attend madrasa that day due to a severe headache. While talking to Michelle on the phone later that night, the narrator suddenly feels as if someone is chasing them, causing fear and prompting them to pray. They also hear a child's cry nearby before quickly returning home. The next day, the group contacts Shihab to check if anything strange happened to him. Shihab reveals he was found standing on the balcony while asleep, an unusual behavior for him. About a month later, Michelle, Shub, a younger brother, and the narrator gather near the bridge to share scary stories. Michelle describes seeing a fiery orb moving between trees there, which had not been told to the narrator before, causing frustration and curiosity. During the story session, Michelle suddenly looks towards the cemetery near the mosque and points out a blazing fireball. The group is shocked by the sight and quickly leaves the area, each returning to their own home. The narrator shares a personal story that was both frightening and fulfilling, expressing gratitude to the listeners and apologizing for taking their valuable time. They emphasize the mysterious nature of the event and request that future story submissions be carefully checked for spelling and accuracy to avoid complications. The speaker continues by stressing the importance of proofreading stories for a smoother process and thanks the audience for their contributions. The segment then shifts into a dramatic dialogue involving themes of presence beyond death, questioning whether encounters with the dead are illusions or supernatural visits. The host Russell welcomes viewers back and introduces a new story from a listener named Siam Al-Razi, a pharmacy student at Savar University. Siam expresses his longtime interest in the series and explains that due to busyness, this is his first time submitting a story, which he has recently found and decided to share. The narrator introduces Tichu Ahmed, a driver of a corpse ambulance from Gopalganj Sadar, sharing a personal connection through a pharmacy business. During a holiday after semester finals, they planned a trip to Bogara together. Tichu recounts his experience driving ambulances, mentioning a particular 2013 incident when he received a call from a friend at Dhaka Medical College to transport a corpse to Tichu describes picking up the corpse of a girl who committed suicide by poisoning and setting off towards Faridpur with his helper Rakib. Since the Padma Bridge was not yet built, they traveled via a Richa ferry. The journey was smooth until they crossed Tara Bridge near Maniganj, where Tichu noticed the ambulance suddenly felt very heavy despite traveling at high speed. Rakib then alerted him to a large black dog running alongside the vehicle at the same pace. The narrator describes driving a car along a road bordered by bushes, forests, and rice fields, advising not to pay attention to the surroundings due to superstitions about hearses. They play Quran recitations and prayers on the phone for protection. After crossing a ferry, they safely reach Faridpur with the body and arrive at the girl's house around midnight. After settling the fare, they prepare to depart for Dhaka, cleaning the ambulance and lighting incense before leaving around 1:30 a.m. Shortly after departure, the narrator feels the urgent need to use the bathroom. The narrator stops the car near a paddy field and notices a figure in a shining white sari standing some distance away, crying softly. He calls his companion Rakib to observe as well, who also sees the figure but does not hear the crying. The narrator insists he hears sobbing, sensing something supernatural during the transport of a corpse. They decide to leave quickly. As they start the car, the narrator realizes the rear tire is stuck in sand and cannot move despite applying force. They get out to inspect the tire, which is deeply embedded in the sand, preventing the car from moving. Confused about the situation, the narrator spots an approaching lorry and asks the driver for help. The lorry driver agrees to tow their car using a rope tied to the lorry's bumper. With this assistance, they manage to free the car and continue their journey towards the ferry terminal. While crossing the ferry late at night, they hear crying sounds coming from inside the ambulance where the corpse is kept. Upon inspection with the lights on, no one and no sound is found. They light a cigarette and continue driving, temporarily calming the eerie atmosphere. They reach Maniganj bus stand where some people and a tea stall are open. After resuming the journey, the ambulance's electricity suddenly fails when the key is taken off the steering, extinguishing the light over the corpse area. When they return to the vehicle after tea, they find a body covered in white cloth lying on the stretcher, which alarms them. They call a tea stall owner to verify the sighting. The tea stall owner advises them to lock the car and move away for safety, mentioning that the Fajr prayer will soon begin and traveling now might cause accidents due to fear. They spend time at the bus stand until after the prayer and then head towards Dhaka. The narrator reveals this was the most frightening period in his driving career and introduces another supernatural incident from 2018. In 2018, while working as a driver for a pharmaceutical company, the narrator had delivered goods to Mymensingh Depot and was returning to Kazipur late at night around midnight. The route from Mymensingh to Kazipur is straightforward without any turns, passing through dense jungle near a bend on the highway. While driving through the dark jungle road with limited visibility from the headlights, the narrator notices cars passing by. At a certain bend near Mauna on the highway, The road splits into 3 identical-looking paths, creating a confusing and eerie situation. The narrator realizes he is approaching this mysterious fork in the road late at night. The narrator describes a tense moment involving a car trip from Mymensingh to Kazippa. The driver brakes suddenly, causing confusion. The narrator refrains from exiting the car despite realizing something is off. They light a cigarette to calm down and observe the road ahead, which appears unchanged, leaving them puzzled about what they just experienced. The narrator shares that they are studying pharmacy at Gano University and provides their phone number for contact. They express hope that the audience enjoyed the story and invite feedback. The segment transitions with music, and the host, Russell, welcomes listeners back, wishing everyone well and preparing to share emails from the audience. Muhammad Sabit Alam from Mymensingh Division introduces a new story submitted by Saigadul Islam Rifat, who is currently residing in Shripur, Gazipur, and originally from Ghafargan. The segment includes greetings and well wishes, and the narrator encourages listeners interested in the story to contact the On a dark, eerie night in a remote village near Shaharasti police station in Chimpar, an unsettling event occurred that still haunts Shab-e-Barat. The atmosphere outside was filled with a whispering wind, as if nature itself was shrouded in an unknown fear. This was no ordinary ghost story, but a chilling account of an ancient evil hidden beneath a veil of sanctity. Shab-e-Barat's terrifying experience from that night is about to be shared. The year was 2013, on the holy night of Shab-e-Barat, a time when the village mosques buzzed with festive prayers and devotion. Despite the sacredness, evil lurked beneath, weaving its deceit. Shab-e-Barat, then a lively young man, along with his friends, decided not to pray at their local mosque but to visit another nearby mosque by the Shaharasti railway station, blending worship with some leisure. As the group walked along the village path, surrounded by dense foliage and faint insect sounds, a sudden phone call brought tragic news. Parvez's grandmother had passed away. This somber news deepened the night's silence and cast a shadow over their spirits. After bidding farewell to Parvez, Shab-e-Barat, Sagar, and Rabbi resumed their journey, unknowingly stepping toward an ominous fate. Upon reaching the mosque near the station, they learned that the special prayer would only take place after dawn, making the wait intolerable. Disheartened, they decided to return home around 1:30 a.m. During the walk back, Sagar suddenly suggested stealing chickens, reasoning that nobody would notice on such a holy night. Despite initial objections, the group's mood shifted, hinting at the sinister influence creeping over them. Sagar convinced Shab-e-Barat and the others to join in the plan to steal chickens, believing the night's sanctity would keep them unnoticed. They purchased a sharp-bladed basket knife from a station shop and headed toward the village. The moon was hidden behind clouds, and the surroundings felt ominously still as they approached a house with a courtyard and a dark, cemented poultry coop. As they shifted the heavy cement slab covering the coop, they heard the chickens crowing inside. Sagar swiftly pulled out 3 chickens, and in the dark under the trees, he slit their throats. The blood, with its salty and nauseating smell, splattered onto Shab-e-Barat's hands, creating a suffocating atmosphere. The struggling chickens' frantic flapping was muffled as Shab-e-Barat covered them with his shirt, trying to conceal the sound and maintain silence. In a tense and eerie atmosphere, a white cat with unusually intense eyes appears amid blood-stained shirts and dead chickens. The cat's presence is unsettling, suggesting it shares a sinister connection to the scene. When a stone is thrown at it, the cat vanishes into the darkness, heightening the sense of fear. The cat reappears briefly to look at Shab-e-Barat with an ominous gaze, as if it is a messenger rather than an ordinary animal. The group quickly leaves, but they feel they are being followed by the cat, which maintains a steady distance behind them on the silent village road. Despite attempts to scare it away, the cat mysteriously disappears, but the feeling of its presence remains. The cat seems like a shadow clinging to them, drawn by the scent of blood and possibly some dark force. At around 2 a.m., while the village is asleep, the group arrives at a small culvert under moonlight. There, a young child stands alone in the middle of the road. An unsettling and unnatural sight that causes the group to pause in shock and gather courage. As they approached Calvert closely, an incredible event occurred where a child's figure instantly transformed into a huge black dog, defying human perception. The child, now a dog, silently leaped into the water without causing any splash or sound, which is scientifically impossible. The group realized they were trapped in a terrifying supernatural cycle. Sensing danger as they fled across a railway bridge that seemed to shake violently, as if gripped by an invisible monster. While crossing the railway line, they noticed a floating female figure several feet above the ground. Her hair was wildly moving as if blown by a storm, despite complete stillness in the environment. And her indistinct face and angry gestures conveyed intense fury. Though fearful, they continued walking over the railway stones, hoping that an entity named Lahana was protecting them from this haunting presence that was closely following. The group encounters a notorious palm tree believed by villagers to be a dwelling of evil spirits. When they cross the tree, an ominous shadow disappears. That night at a friend's house, they experience intense fear, hearing eerie sounds and feeling a presence outside. 3 friends huddle together for comfort, unable to sleep, fearful for their lives until dawn's call to prayer. After surviving the terrifying night, Shembai and his friends never again venture out at night with raw meat or blood. Understanding that darkness is not just for rest, but a realm inhabited by unseen entities, the narrator emphasizes that while some may deny these beings, they exist close to us, waiting for a single mistake to reveal themselves. The story was shared by Saijatul Islam Rifat from Shripa Gazette. Russell welcomes listeners and encourages subscribing and activating notifications before introducing the next story. Muhammad Sifat Alam then prepares to share a new incident with the audience. The upcoming story is a long-standing family legend passed down through generations, not a recent event. It centers on Resmiya, known as Boradada, who was one of 12 siblings. The narrator begins by providing a brief background on Resmiya and his family to better contextualize the tale. The story begins in the 1920s in a remote, underdeveloped village far from the city, where Resmiya and his family lived a simple life. The focus shifts to Resmiya's elder sister, Shruti, whose tragic life event forms the core of the narrative. As Shruti reached marriageable age, her parents sought a suitable groom according to societal norms. Eventually, a match was found with Hamid, a handsome, polite, devout, and respected young man from a wealthy and honorable family in a neighboring village. Hamid's father, Mr. Saeed, was a prosperous businessman running a large grocery and essential goods store in their remote village, making them one of the richest families in the area. Shruti was instantly attracted to Hamid's character and the family's status, accepting him happily as her husband. Following a grand Islamic wedding ceremony, Hamid brought Shruti to live in his family home, where he cared for his elderly father Saeed. Hamid's mother had left the family long ago, so they lived together with Shruti, accepting this responsibility without objection. Hamid and Saeed worked hard to manage their business, which flourished quickly due to lack of competition in the village. Their prosperous store brought wealth and happiness to Hamid and Shruti's household, filling their lives with joy and peace. However, their happiness was soon overshadowed by tragedy when Saeed suddenly fell gravely ill with an unknown disease that local doctors and healers could not diagnose. His condition worsened daily, leaving Hamid helpless and desperate to find a cure. Unable to find a solution locally, Hamid resolved to seek advanced medical treatment and better medicine in the city, despite the difficult and lengthy journey at that time. He hoped to save his father, but was uncertain how to proceed. Hamid set off on the long journey to the city with his ill father, unaware that his efforts would be in vain. Saeed passed away at home before Hamid could return with medicine. The news quickly spread throughout the village, prompting neighbors to come and support Shruti. The village elders and neighbors helped perform Saeed's Islamic funeral rites, including washing and shrouding the body and burying him in the family courtyard, as was customary. After sunset, Shruti and the community held a large prayer gathering at the house to seek peace for Saeed's soul. After nightfall, villagers comfort Shruti and return home, leaving her alone in a large, silent house with a newly made grave in the courtyard. Despite the eerie setting and her husband Hamid not yet returned from the city, Shruti feels no fear and continues her tasks calmly, hoping Hamid is nearby and will soon come home. She anxiously waits, unable to sleep, as midnight strikes and the village falls into deep silence. Suddenly Shruti hears heavy, cautious footsteps approaching from behind the house, filling her with hope that it is her husband. As she prepares to open the back door, she is startled by a strange, eerie humming in an unknown language coming from outside. The footsteps and humming grow closer, causing a deep unease and fear within her. Her instincts warn her that this cannot be Hamid, as his voice and behavior would never be so frightening or strange. Driven by a mix of fear and curiosity, Shruti slightly opens the door and sees a horrifying figure, her father-in-law Saeed, who was buried earlier that day, now risen with a terrifying demonic appearance. His face looks like burnt coal with fierce sharp teeth, long claws like a predatory bird, and a massive black bear-like body. Frozen with terror, Shruti cannot scream and immediately runs towards the front door, hoping to escape this monstrous being. As Shruti flees outside, the monstrous bear-like creature chases her, roaring terrifyingly. It runs with the intent to capture and tear her apart with its claws. Crying out for help, Shruti runs desperately towards her father's house in the neighboring village, while the heavy footsteps of the beast grow closer, threatening her very life. Shruti narrowly escapes a deadly incident when a huge coconut tree suddenly falls on the road where she is standing. Summoning her last strength, she jumps over the tree and, gasping for breath, sees a monstrous entity fall to the ground after losing its balance while trying to cross the tree. The sinister creature momentarily forgets to attack her and instead furiously claws at the dead coconut tree. Taking advantage of the creature's distraction, Shruti runs directly to her father's house. Reaching her brother Maya, she collapses at the door, crying out for help. Maya quickly opens the door and sees Suti's pale, bloodless face and labored breathing. Shocked by her terrifying state, Shruti, trembling and struggling to speak, tells her family that the man they buried as her father-in-law rose from his grave that morning in a monstrous form resembling a huge hairy bear. He chased her with sharp claws, trying to tear her apart, but Allah saved her. Her family is stunned and unsure whether to believe her, but her fearful eyes and physical condition convince them the incident is true. Shuti's mother holds her, trying to calm her down, reassuring her that she is now safe at home and that the evil spirit cannot harm her anymore. Despite some comfort, Shruti tearfully vows never to return to the cursed house again. The traumatic memory of the previous night's horrific events lingers in her mind. News of Shuti's terrifying experience spreads quickly throughout the village, causing widespread fear. Villagers avoid the large house after dark, wrapped in an atmosphere of ominous dread. Shruti spends a week safely at her father's house, anxiously awaiting her husband Hamid's return. After a week, Hamid returns from his village with medicine for his father, but quickly learns from gossip that his father has died and supposedly risen as a terrifying demon attacking Shruti. Disturbed by the rumors, Hamid is deeply saddened by his father's death and disturbed by the villagers' fearful stories. Hamid firmly rejects the villagers' superstitions, insisting his father was a pious man who would never transform into a monstrous spirit. He angrily dismisses the stories as baseless rumors and superstition. Determined to bring Shruti back home, He goes to his in-laws' house to convince her to return. Hamid tries to reassure a crying Suti, urging her not to listen to the villagers and to return home, believing she must have mistaken a wild animal for his father out of fear. However, Suti resolutely refuses, shaking her head firmly and pleading with Hamid not to force her to go back. A character refuses to return to a cursed house after witnessing terrifying events there, believing it is no longer safe. Another character, Hamid, becomes enraged by the refusal and insults, insisting he will go alone to prove that the frightening claims are false, despite the danger. Hamid returns alone to the dark and eerie house, which causes a growing sense of fear and anxiety among others. The following morning, after Hamid fails to emerge, Sudhir feels an intense worry and calls his niece, Royce, to join him in checking on Hamid's condition, fearing something serious has happened. Sudhir and Royce hasten to Hamid's house, where Sudhir feels a deep sense of foreboding. Upon entering the house through a slightly ajar, damp door, they are horrified to find Hamid's dead body lying gruesomely in the center of a large room, indicating a tragic and violent outcome. Suti witnesses a horrific scene where her husband Hamid's body is brutally mutilated, with internal organs exposed. Overwhelmed by the trauma, she faints after a loud scream. Meanwhile, Ruiz, a girl who also sees the terrifying sight, runs out of the house, screaming to alert the village. Villagers gather at the scene and are petrified by Hamid's brutal condition, quickly realizing that the monstrous Tanbor is responsible. Following this tragic death, Suti's joy in life vanishes instantly, leaving her silent and tearful, consumed by grief, pain, and confusion about how someone could commit such cruelty. Unable to bear her sorrow, Suti takes her brother to consult a respected spiritual scholar, Shab-e-Barat, in a nearby village. Tearfully, she recounts every detail from the beginning up to Hamid's death, seeking answers for the brutal and senseless violence inflicted on her family. Shab-e-Barat listens intently and then meditates deeply, invoking Allah's words to uncover the truth. He solemnly informs Suti that what happened is horrendous and completely against Islamic law, revealing that her father-in-law, Saeed Sahab, had committed a great sin in his lifetime that is connected to these tragic events. Saeed made a sinister pact with a powerful and evil entity from China to rapidly expand Modi's shop business and amass illegal wealth. This pact, considered blasphemous, required Saeed Sahib to offer the rights to himself and 7 generations of his bloodline to the jinn. After Saeed Sahib's death, his body came under the control of this jinn, which then used it to claim his first heir, Hamid. After hearing this horrifying truth from Shab-e-Barat, Suti was overwhelmed with grief. Crying for her deceased husband Hamid and feeling anger towards her father-in-law's evil deeds, she feared the curse might claim innocent lives. Shab-e-Barat reassured her not to fear unnecessarily and explained that Islamic Sharia law provides a way to permanently destroy the jinn's influence. Shab-e-Barat advised Suti to bravely return to the house, exhume her father-in-law's grave, and find the dark talismans or satanic objects hidden with the dead body. These talismans must be destroyed through Islamic rituals involving ruqya and zamzam water to annul the jinn's pact forever. Despite this clear guidance, Suti was too terrified to undertake this daunting task. Suti's mind was haunted by the gruesome image of Hamid's mutilated corpse, preventing her from summoning the courage to approach the cursed grave. The villagers, enraged upon learning of Saeed Sahib's blasphemous acts, refused to release the evil spirit, since the ritual to destroy the talismans was never completed. The malevolent jinn continued wreaking havoc nightly in Saeed Sahib's form. Fear and terror forced the villagers to abandon their ancestral homes and land, turning the once bustling village into a desolate and cursed place. Even after many years, no one dares to inhabit Saeed Sahib's accursed village, and it remains uncertain if the village's curse has ever been lifted. The speaker shares a story they heard long ago, presenting it as a popular anecdote rather than a confirmed event. They express hope that the listeners enjoyed the story and invite feedback, whether positive or negative. The segment concludes with well wishes for the audience's health and happiness.